Hello, my friend, and thank you for taking the time to listen to this audio recording where we will be discussing mental health, self-harm, and healing. By we, I mean you and me. We are the only people here right now. Throughout the discussion, I will be addressing you specifically in attempts to make this a more personal experience. To preface, I would like to begin by saying I am not a licensed therapist or psychologist. The purpose of this is to share some of my own dealings with mental health and hopefully encourage you in your own journey. If you seek licensed and professional advice, I would very much recommend you speak to a counselor or a therapist. Doing this helped me tremendously, and it can do the same for you. Now then, mental health. I think it would be most appropriate to first have a solid definition of what mental health means so that you and I can both be on the same page as we discuss the subject further. The CDC defines mental health as our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It affects how we think, feel, and act. It also helps determine how we handle stress, relate to others, and make healthy choices. I feel like we hear a lot about mental health in our everyday lives, but in my opinion, I feel it is still severely under-discussed. Maybe it is something that people feel uncomfortable talking about. Maybe some do not think of it as that big of an issue, and I am ashamed to say that this used to be my way of thinking. Growing up and even into my teenage years, I used to shrug off mental health. Honestly, part of me didn't believe it to be real. I used to think of it as some made-up thing that was perhaps a way for people to get more attention. Because after all, sometimes we want people to feel sorry for us. We want people to care about us. We want to play the victim. And even in cases where we are truly the victim, I would encourage you to not live as if you are the victim. We will further discuss this later. It wasn't until I began to have my own struggles with mental health when my eyes were open to how serious it really is. A series of events occurred in my life within the past year that seemingly put me in a hole. During this time, I felt insecure, inadequate, confused. This also brought about a lot of anger, which was how I tried to cope with my problems. I learned during this process how quick my temper really was, and it seemed as if right when things couldn't get any worse, they did. Can you relate to that? I won't go into all the details about everything that occurred because there are parts of my life which I prefer to keep private. The purpose of this is not to gossip or bring up any kind of drama because it would do more harm than good and honestly be a waste of time as I attempt to provide help to you. But what I will say is after what seemed like a tornado wind of unfortunate events had occurred in my life, I was left feeling many different emotions. I felt broken, betrayed, frustrated, and worst of all, I felt completely alone. It was as if everything I thought I knew, I suddenly didn't know anymore. Can you relate to that? I was left in a position of not knowing who I was, where my value came from, what direction I wanted to take with my life, who I could trust. I felt as if everyone around me knew exactly what they were doing with their life, were having the greatest time ever, no struggles, no hardships, and then there was me, the anomaly. My family was really the only people I felt I could trust. They were the only ones speaking truth into me and encouraging me through these difficult times. Unfortunate to say, there were many times I would reject their help. Perhaps I felt undeserving of it. Perhaps I was simply annoyed by it. Or maybe I felt as if my mental health was something I had to deal with on my own, which was the biggest lie I ever told myself. Friend, you don't have to go through this alone. If you don't have a strong or supportive family situation or don't have any friends you truly feel like you can trust, I would highly recommend you get with a counselor. Talk to a therapist. If you feel like there is shame in that, or if you have been told therapy is something to be looked down upon, I will be the first to tell you that's BS. As someone now out of therapy, I can testify to the benefits of getting down to the root of what you are going through, how to best deal with it, and most importantly, how to overcome it. Now comes the portion of the discussion which I do not take lightly, and that is the subject of self-harm. I choose to censor and not use the other term, but I am certain we both know what I am referring to. Yes, self-harm was also something I struggled with in this dark period of my life. Remember some of the things I mentioned I was feeling? Insecure, inadequate, alone. I recall moments where I found myself curled up in the corner of my room, crying my eyes out because life was just something I didn't want to deal with anymore. The pain was just too great. After all, if all I was going to do was suffer, why put myself through that? Why not just put an end to it? Seems like the easy way out, right? And come on, no one would ever know I'm gone. I mean, after all, I don't have any friends checking up on me. My phone isn't spamming with notifications. I guess people just don't care I exist anymore. Hell, the world would be better off. We all would be happier if I was not living anymore. Do you notice what's happening here? I like to call this the snowball effect. Our minds begin with an initial negative thought, which doesn't seem too severe. But as we consider it further, we gravitate towards every single possible outcome that becomes detrimental to our way of thinking. As the saying goes, we make a mountain out of a molehill. The mind is a funny thing. When in a panicked state, it has a tendency to blow things far out of proportion to the point where half of the things we are worried about or thinking about aren't even true in most cases. It's like a fight or flight reaction. It's a way of being prepared for the worst. Now, why is this? Well, it has everything to do with our mindset. Are we in a negative mindset or a positive one? Depending on which one it is, it will dramatically affect the conclusions we come to. In this particular point in my life, I adapted a very negative mindset. I mean, it was easy to. Things weren't going the way I wanted them to, just one bad thing after another, so why not think of God and the world being against me? Why not adapt a negative mindset? Why not play the victim? When it came to self-harm, one thing I was told multiple times, and something that has really stuck with me, was I was seeking a permanent solution to a temporary situation. Let me say that again. I was seeking a permanent solution to a temporary situation. Though we don't always believe it, these trials we go through in our lives are in fact temporary. Now, they may last a couple of weeks, sometimes months, sometimes even years. Despite the fact that I am now out of therapy, I still struggle sometimes with things left over from that point in time in my life. The only difference is I have learned how to better deal with it. One thing I would like to stress in discussing self-harm is to be aware of what you say. I would encourage you to never say, "That couldn't happen to me," because it very well could. I used to say the exact same thing. Now, I don't say this to scare you because it is very possible that self-harm could be something you never have to deal with, and if so, you should consider yourself very blessed. And I don't say this with any undertone of animosity. I am truly happy for you if it has never been something you have struggled with, because it is truly a horrifying situation to be in. We all have our own unique hardships, and they vary from person to person. Something else I would encourage you to be aware of saying, or rather not saying, are jokes about self-harm. It's easy to make these kind of jokes when you haven't struggled with it. I used to be guilty of this until I dealt with it myself and have come to realize the weight of making comments such as these. Traffic was so bad, I wanted to kill myself. Oh gosh, I forgot to study for the quiz. I should just jump in front of a train. I think you get my point. We sometimes laugh it off as if it isn't a big deal, but I'm telling you, it is. There are people who truly have these thoughts every single day, and it is nothing to be taken lightly. I would encourage you to be aware of what you are going to say before you say it. If you have ever considered self-harm, you know how scary it can be. And in some twisted sense, you also know how tempting it can be. Believe me, I know. But remember, friend, it is a permanent solution to a temporary situation. Be mindful of your thoughts. Seek help. Please don't go through this alone. I know for a fact if I would have, I probably wouldn't be speaking to you right now. My favorite movie is It's a Wonderful Life. And yes, I know it's a Christmas movie, but it is a movie that could be watched at any time of the year and still be just as effective. It sheds light on the subject of self-harm, and the main character, George, learns what the world would be like if he had never existed. And boy, it is a lot worse than if he had. He too was in a negative mindset. At the end of his line, spiraling through the snowball effect. But because of a supernatural vision, he is given a brand new perspective on life. He realizes his value and the many ways he has touched those around him, as well as everything he has to be thankful for. He comes to the conclusion, as the title suggests, It's a Wonderful Life. I would highly recommend giving it a watch. I believe it will encourage you in your own journey. Finally, I would like to conclude this discussion by talking about healing. No matter what situation you are going through or have gone through, healing and restoration is possible. I know it may feel like all hope is lost and you'll forever be trapped in this state of anxiety or depression, but I will be the first to tell you, there is hope. Now, will the problems permanently go away? No. We are human. We all endure our own unique set of challenges at different points in our lives, and there are some circumstances which we go through that will seemingly always live with us. I have broken down a step-by-step healing process that helped me, and I hope will help you as well. First, one of the most important aspects of the healing process is to acknowledge that someone else's life is different than yours, and that's okay. The reason this is such an important part of restoration is because it eliminates the concept of comparison, which is the second step. Comparison is toxic. It is as simple as that. When we compare, whether we realize it or not, we are being ungrateful. We are in that negative mindset, which we talked about earlier. It can be easy to only focus on what is going wrong in our life. Even in times when we do feel this way, I guarantee there is always at least one thing we can be thankful for. If nothing else, we can be thankful we woke up this morning. We can be thankful we didn't give up the day before, no matter how badly we wanted to. I encourage you, friend, if nothing else, be thankful for the will to survive. Now, you may be saying to yourself, well, Sam, avoiding comparison is easier said than done. How can I best stay away from it? Here comes the hard part, but I promise you it will help. Here it is, step number 3. Take a break from social media. If you are in a state of healing, you need to only be focusing on yourself and how you can get better. Worrying about hundreds of other people, some of which you may not even know, and what they are doing is too much for you to take on in the vulnerable state you are in. Once I began my healing process, I got off of social media, and it helped tremendously. And when I did eventually get to the point when I wanted to post again, it was strictly for me. So what I would do and still do is post something and leave it. I don't check who liked it, who commented on it, who still follows me, who doesn't follow me, just post it and leave. I haven't scrolled on Instagram in months. I don't look at Snapchat stories. The only reason I use social media is strictly for myself. Remember this phrase: your life is not defined by likes. Now, the reason behind this approach to social media for me personally is I really feel I have come a long way from where I was many months ago, and I wouldn't want to hinder my progress. I feel I have accomplished great things for myself and have been gaining that sense of confidence back that I unintentionally lost within the past year. And all it would take is seeing someone doing something I think to be cooler than what I'm doing, or someone has something that I don't, or even finding someone more attractive than me. You see how the comparison naturally occurs. It's not in any way beneficial for my healing process. And friend, let me tell you, social media is a mirage. It's fake. People only present the best aspects of their life on social media. How many times do you see people posting videos or pictures of them being sad or crying? Probably not that many times. But when we see what people post on social media, we assume that picture, that one picture, represents what their life is like 24/7. I guarantee you, 9 times out of 10, it's not. In fact, in most cases, it is a way to cover up their sadness or insecurities. It provides a sense of reassurance. Now, is this always the case? No. Some people may genuinely just live a good and carefree life. And if you are that person, you are very blessed. But to those who may not live a life such as this, I would encourage you to do another thing, which brings us to step 4 in the healing process. Don't be bitter. I can tell you from personal experience, I know how easy it can be to hold a grudge against those who appear to live a better life than you. You become jealous, which leads to anger, which eventually leads to rejection. This is why keeping in mind the fact that everyone is on their own unique journey is so important. This also brings back one of my earlier points of not comparing. Bitterness leads to destruction. It is toxic behavior. And if you are going through a hard time and there happens to be someone else in your life who maybe isn't, it may just not be their time yet. And this is in no way of saying that we should wish bad things to happen to someone. I am in no way endorsing that. But what I am saying is they will eventually go through learning experiences where they have to persevere too, just as you currently are. That's just one of the many realities of life, and it is no different for anyone else. The final step in the healing process I will address is drinking. Now, I know most people may roll their eyes at this, but nothing good can ever come from alcohol, especially during the process of healing. We hear all the time in music, we see it all the time in movies, this concept of drinking your problems away. That phrase itself is a flat-out lie. There is no such thing as drinking your problems away. Sure, they may fade for a short period of time, but they'll be there when you wake up with a hangover the next morning, and on top of that, you'll feel even worse from drinking the night before. So really all you're doing is just adding gasoline to the fire. It does nothing but make things worse. You may have heard the phrase, alcohol can only mask the problem. This is true. Alcohol can only mask the problem. And I understand the temptation, believe me, I do. When I was going through this difficult time in my life, I recall many times when I wanted to give up and just resort to alcohol because the pain I was facing was so severe and overwhelming, but I stayed strong and resisted the temptation. And I'm proud to say that as a now 20-year-old man, I have never had a sip and don't plan to. Now, how did I do this? More importantly, why did I do this? The answer is, I knew for me, it would be a sign of weakness. Furthermore, something I always told myself whenever I got those urges was, if you start, you most likely won't be able to stop. Something like alcohol has a tendency to become an addiction. So the last thing I needed was a drinking problem on top of everything else I was going through. Plus, I knew it would do nothing but mask the problem, as I mentioned earlier. The key is, as hard as this sounds, you must face your problems head on. Alcohol is a detour. In fact, it's more like a dead end. Yeah, you can veer off the path for a short period of time, but eventually you're going to hit a wall and come right back to where you left off. It's a red herring. So, the choice is yours. You can choose the easy way, that is, to waste time with different vices, avoiding your problems and not making any progress, or you can make the decision to approach this time from a position of strength and resilience and be further on your way to conquering your problems. Believe me, once you put your head down, avoid distractions, focus on yourself, and do what you need to do to get better, it makes the process go by a hell of a lot faster. Now, is this to say that you can't have fun during this time? Of course not. Just the right kind of fun. Remember, we are trying to do what is only going to benefit our process of healing. Going out with some friends every now and then, or spending time with family especially, can help out immensely. Just make sure you are surrounding yourself with the right crowd. That is, people who actually love you and want what's best for you, and not just hoping to get you wasted so you'll shut up about your problems. There's a phrase that says, you tend to become who you surround yourself with. There is truth to this. So, do the right thing, and be careful with those you decide to put your trust in. So, let's review our 5-step process to healing and restoration. First, we must acknowledge the fact that someone else's life is different than yours, with its own unique set of challenges. Second, to avoid comparison. Third, take a break from social media. Number 4, don't be bitter. And finally, number 5, avoid alcohol and other harmful activities. One more thing I will add, and I guess you could consider a bonus step, is prayer or meditation. Now, I understand not everyone listening to this may follow a particular religion. For me personally, I grew up in a Christian home, so my faith has always been important to me. Because of this, I have found prayer to be very useful during this time in my life. In fact, I have kept a prayer journal, and still do, where I will write down what I'm going through, my questions and concerns, as well as prayers for others in my life. If prayer is not something you feel comfortable with, I would recommend meditation. And no, I'm not necessarily talking about how it's portrayed in movies with the humming and everything. Meditation is simply a time to clear your mind. Find a comfortable place to sit, inside or outside. Maybe turn on some peaceful music, close your eyes, and just focus on your breathing. The key during stressful times is knowing how to slow down. Meditation and prayer can help with this. So, to conclude, I would like to first say none of this is supposed to be easy, and chances are you will mess up from time to time. Temptation will come. I guarantee you that. The only difference is how you choose to deal with it. I encourage you, friend, don't play the victim. I know you may have been done wrong. I know it hurts. I know it feels like nothing makes sense and everything is crumbling around you. But hear me when I say, you do not have to be the victim. Be a warrior. Attack your problems from a position of strength. Believe me, I know it's hard getting up every morning. I know the pain that churns in your stomach every day. I know it's difficult, but keep going. You're doing great. You are capable of overcoming this. I know it feels impossible, and that was the same thing I used to think. I wanted to give up too, but I'm still here, aren't I? And guess what? So are you. Nothing you go through, no matter how severe, is ever worth your life. You have been created with a purpose to do great things, and great things you will do, my friend. Look at me. Don't be afraid. You can do this. Don't give up. Thank you for listening to this audio recording. My name is Sam Phibbs. If you found this helpful and beneficial to your situation, please feel free to share it, especially if you know someone who may also be going through a difficult time. Thanks again, and take care.